to the four of four different people. Today is Wednesday. This Shabbat, we will be blessing the new month of
ER. No,
Close.
Sivan.
We're in ER, Sivan.
Sivan, right, Sivan.
Great, great. So since my birthday is Rosh Chodesh Sivan, I always like to say that every year they
Okay,
announce
Yom
my birthday.
Huledet Sameach.
Thank you, but they always announce my birthday in Shul because they announce Rosh Chodesh Sivan. So I'm like, they're announcing my birthday again. So I just wanted to put that out here right now that when I sit in Shul, that's what I think of on the Shabbat Mevarch. What day of the week is Rosh Chodesh? This month, this coming month. Anybody know?
Sunday,
Last month it was Shabbat. It's always the next
the
day.
next, right.
Sometimes it's 2 days, but it's always the next day. Judy, by the way, you're not on video anymore, so you might want to go back on
Okay.
video. Um, so we have a special haftarah, a special haftarah that we say, that we read in Shul whenever. Remember, we did it last month because Rosh
Yes.
Chodesh Iyar was on Shabbat. Yep. And we're doing it, and that was a special one about Rosh Chodesh. But also when Rosh Chodesh is on Sunday, we also have a special one. Now, here's the question. Why is that odd? Why is that odd? Why is that odd that if Rosh Chodesh is on Sunday, we should have a special haftarah? It's not a trick question.
Sunday's not a special day. It's not Shabbos.
Wait,
No,
say that
on-
again,
on
Karen?
Shabbos.
One second. Karen, say that again.
It's not a special day. It's not Shabbos. It's just a day of the
Right,
week.
it's not on the day, it's the next day. So it's like,
Yeah.
wait a minute, if, for example, Sukkot happens in the week, do we read a special Haftarah on Shabbat about Sukkot? No. Usually, what do we read the Haftarah about? What is it connected to?
The Parsha.
The
Either
Parsha.
the Parsha, right?
Yeah,
Either the
we
Parsha
say.
or a special maftir portion, right? If we do
Right.
Parshat Zachor or Chodesh.
Because we bench Rosh Chodesh.
No, I
We
know we
say
bench
we
Rosh Vivian, I
on
know we.
Shabbos.
No,
Yeah,
you're
and then we have a
right.
special Haftarah for that.
No, wait. Slow down, Vivian. It's true that we bench Rosh Chodesh, but we don't have a special Haftarah every time we bench Rosh Chodesh. That's not relevant to the Haftarah. No, every month we would have a special Haftarah because we bless the new month every month. So that's not the reason, is because it's Shabbat Mevarchim. That is not the reason why we do it. Rather, it's because the next day. So what's odd is that we don't read anything about the next day being Rosh Chodesh. We don't have any relevant halachot that the next day is Rosh Chodesh. Why would our sages choose? And by the way, this is the time of the Talmud or even earlier that they did this. Very old, very ancient, this custom of Machar Chodesh. What does that mean, by the way, Machar Chodesh?
The next day is Rosh Chodesh, the Machar.
Tomorrow is Rosh Chodesh,
Tomorrow.
b'diuk,
Right.
exactly. So on a surface level, we do see a connection because we're going to read the story. It's actually a story this time, so it won't be so hard for Stuart to hear it, because for Stuart, it's really hard to hear when the prophets keep yelling at us. It's like, that is not a good educational model. But this is a story, so it's about allegiance, it's about loyalty, it's about love. And it has in it something about Rosh Chodesh. So I want to give you some things to think of, okay? First of all, even before that, let's just for a moment imagine the day before Rosh Chodesh. What is unique about it? Not what's special about it, but what's unique about it. The day before Rosh Chodesh.
Could it be
Think
that
about the cycle of the moon. Yes, Moshe.
that Adim have to come on Shabbat?
Adim testimony. Well, so usually they come when they see the new month, Moshe. So they're actually going to come Sunday, right? They're not actually probably going to come on Shabbat. It's a good
Yeah.
guess. But
And-
yes,
and-
Vivian, what do you want to
In
say?
the far-flung areas, they don't know exactly when Rosh Chodesh is going to
No,
be
no,
in
that's not.
Yerushalayim.
No, Vivian, but that's not my.
Yeah.
You're right, but that's not my question. My question, even in Yerushalayim, they don't know when Rosh Chodesh is going to be on the
Yeah.
day before. So that's not so relevant. You're talking about why we keep a 2-day yontif outside of Israel because we can't. That's not what I'm asking. In the cycle of the moon, what could be special about the day before Rosh Chodesh? Because remember, anytime we read Machar Chodesh, it's always going to be the day before Rosh Chodesh, by definition, right? Because we're reading it on Shabbat and Rosh Chodesh is Sunday. Any thoughts?
Is it a full moon?
It's not a full moon, Karen. You're getting
No.
closer.
No
The full moon is on the 15th of the month, in the middle. Remember, the new moon is that tiny, tiny, tiny sliver. That's the
Yeah.
new moon. So you're right before
Oh,
the
it's a
time
Full
sliver.
moon, full moon.
No, the full moon is on the 15th of the
Oh.
month. Right. Rosh Chodesh, the first day of the month, is always the teeniest sliver that we see of the moon. Obviously, the whole moon is there.
Oh.
It's just the way the shadow is, we only see a sliver. So what happens on the day before? Helen, you were going to say something.
I was saying on the day before, there's no moon. You don't see the
There's
moon.
no moon. It's
No
dark.
moon.
It's actually the darkest day of the month. Well said. It's the dark, there's no moon at all. I mean, maybe there's a teeny, teeny sliver, but generally, it's actually a dark day. Dark physically, you say. And yet, what's going to happen in just a few hours? On
moon-
Shabbat,
The moon's gonna appear?
the moon's going to appear. Exactly. Which means that at the darkest moment, we have hope. We have light. We have a new beginning. We have a new possibility. It's literally taking the idea of Rosh Chodesh and concretizing it by saying we're going to read something special on the Shabbat, that is the day before, to remind us that every month, because every month when it's not Sunday, then the day before is just the day of the week. We don't have Haftarah, so we don't have a way to read a Haftarah. But when the day before Rosh Chodesh comes out to Shabbat, we have an opportunity to talk about moving from darkness to hope, from darkness to light, from darkness to new beginnings, from darkness to having paths forward. Okay, I think from everything that I've read and learned about preparing for today, that to me is the most powerful takeaway. And I'm starting with it because I don't want to miss it. And we have a shorter class today because we're going to read the story. But if you now think of the story, keeping this in mind, you will see that the story has many levels. There's the surface level, which is Machar Chodesh. I mean, it's just going to be talking about tomorrow is Rosh Chodesh. So that's an obvious literary connection. But our sages wouldn't have just picked it for a literary connection because there's nothing special about the day before Rosh Chodesh. So Rav Moshe Lichtenstein, actually, that's what he wrote about in his article, which I thought was really, really, really beautiful. The other thing is, and this is something else I want to say, you'll see in the story, remember how many days Rosh Chodesh are there every month?
One or two?
One or two. It's either one or two.
One or two.
This is the only time that there's a mention of a 2-day Rosh Chodesh in a story, that's mentioned in our, that there's an example of it. You're going to see that as well. Now, if you think about it, okay, bear with me for a second. On a Rosh Chodesh, which is 2 days, Shabbat and Sunday, then you could imagine that they might have read this Machar Chodesh because it's Rosh Chodesh today. So you with me? If let's say Shabbat and Sunday were both Rosh Chodesh, okay? That happens sometimes. So actually, people don't know. Should you read the Shabbat Rosh Chodesh one or should you read the Machar Chodesh? And some people read the Shabbat Rosh Chodesh Haftarah, which we learned last month, and a pasuk or two from the Machar Chodesh, just so you know. I don't know if anybody reads both. But there is a teaching that some people only read this Haftarah whenever it was a 2-day Rosh Chodesh of Shabbat and Sunday. Because then it would make sense because it's connected to the Shabbat. But Rav Moshe Lichtenstein is saying that we see from this idea that Haftarah is not only about literary connection to the Parsha or to the holiday or to the Maftir. Rather, it has a greater goal, which is to connect us to the life cycle of the Jewish year, whether it's a yearly one or a monthly one. As a greater goal. Okay, people with me on this? We don't have this opportunity usually. Usually it connects directly with the Parsha. But here we have an example that by the fact that it's an exception, It teaches us something. The exception teaches us a rule that perhaps we weren't aware of before. All right, any thoughts before we open up the Haftarah? Okay.
Just
like-
one question.
The word
Wait,
mach,
Rega, one at a time. Wait, one at a time, Judy. First Moshe, then Judy. Judy,
Sure.
come back on video. Yeah.
When you have a 2-day Rosh Chodesh, the first day of that Rosh Chodesh is not really the next month. It's still the 30th day of the month that you're in.
Right. And it actually will still be, well, you're right. But I don't think that's 100% relevant to this idea. I'm not saying it's wrong. It's correct what you're saying. Now, I don't know when the new moon appears exactly, but remember what we said a long time ago, that the lunar month is actually 29 and a half days. So sometimes it's 29 days and sometimes it's 30. So the 2-day Rosh Chodesh comes to make up for that because you can't have a half-day Rosh Chodesh. But I'm not sure when the sliver of moon comes. Judy, you put yourself on mute. If you want to speak, you might want to unmute. Judy Stiglitz.
there,
Yeah. She fell off video, but that's okay.
okay.
Yeah, what did you want to say?
Okay, if you take the if you understand the word machar as a Yiddish verse, like a machar, the one who makes something, chodesh. So our saying the Haftarah of machar chodesh makes it, inspires us that we're in the process of engaging the chodesh.
Well, that's an interesting pun. I'm impressed between
I
Yiddish
know
and
that. I know we're talking. This is
No, this is
Ivrit and
Hebrew,
from the
right? And a
Haftarah. But
macher, I
it's
think
a
a
little
macher.
bit of kvetch,
Yeah, a little bit of a kvetch, which is also a Yiddish word. Okay.
right?
Okay, friends, let's read it. I do want to read it because it's a beautiful story and we can talk about it once we read it. So I'm going to read it through. I will read it mostly in I'll read it mostly in the English. I'll read it in the English. I feel like it'll just go faster. And some of you may be familiar with it. Yeah, okay.
I know
I
it
just
is.
want to say, I'm sorry, Stuart, what?
I know. I'm on that page. I'm 9:48. And Jonathan said to him,
You have water over there? Are you over there?
Wait 1 second, Henry, you got to go on mute, okay?
and
Henry,
Jonathan said,
Henry, can
right?
you, yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I hear you. 1 second. Just going to put Henry on mute because we have some yelling. Okay. Yes, you're right. But I want to tell you, okay.
A very good story between Jonathan and David, a good friend. But Jonathan's father hated David.
Correct. So what I want,
That's
that is correct. I want to give you some background before we go into it. So who is familiar with the story of Yonatan and David, or Jonathan and
I
David?
am. I am.
You're familiar, other than Stuart. We get it that you are. Yeah, we heard. Excellent. So we're coming, are people raise your hand? Some people are not familiar. If you're not familiar, raise your hand. Okay, so let me give you some background. The background is that Saul is the king. He's the first king, actually. And David appears on the horizon. Saul started out really a good king with a lot of confidence, a lot of self-confidence, good looking. It says Mishichmo v'mala, which is a Hebrew expression for being tall and imposing and a wonderful person with wonderful values. But at some point, we're not sure. It might be mental illness. Actually, it's not clear. He had depression or madness. We're not sure. But what happened was that David comes on the scene. David was the 7th son of Yishai. He gets anointed by the prophet Shmuel. And at the beginning, Saul really, really welcomes him in. But at some point, remember, David is the one who, people know that story, that David beats Goliath, the giant, by the slingshot. That's kind of a kid story that most people know. People know that story? Okay. So David is now becoming very popular. I mean, he's a young child at the time, or youngish. I don't know exactly how old he was. And then he ends up coming into Saul's court, and Saul really loves him. And he plays the Lyre, lyre. Is that how you pronounce it? Lyre. So it's a form of a harp. And he soothes Saul, and Saul really loves him. But then whether it's because of Saul's insecurity or his mental illness, or we don't know exactly what, he begins to mistrust. David. And then there's a lot of stories in Shmuel that you can read on your own if you'd like, about him running after him. There's a beautiful story about him hiding in a cave, and a spider spins a web, such a thick web that the soldiers go right by because they say it couldn't be he went into this cave because there's such a thick spider web. It couldn't be he came in. It couldn't be a spider wove that, since the time he went into the cave. Later on, he gets to thank the spider. So there's a whole beautiful story about that. It's a midrash. I don't think that's in the text, but in any case, we have contention between Saul and David. So that's one part. Another part is that Saul has a son, Jonathan, who was his firstborn. And they are colleagues. I mean, he relies on him, he trusts him. But Jonathan recognizes in David similar ideals, similar values, similar characteristics. In fact, we have a story not long before the story we're going to read. Am I speaking too quickly? No, I'm good. Okay. I'm passionate. When it's fun, I get very passionate. So slow me down if I'm too fast. There's a story where Jonathan on his own goes and also a battle, not exactly like slaying Goliath, but also saves the Jews in a battle on his own. And in both of those cases of David and Jonathan, they turn to God. And God, they believe in God, and God helps them through this difficult battle. But in both of those cases, Shaul begins mistrusting. It's not like Saul says to Jonathan, "Oh, you're amazing. You're going to carry on for me. I'm so glad that you saved us." No. So on one hand, Saul and Jonathan, his son, they have a very warm and close connection. And Jonathan is supposed to be continuing the legacy of Saul. On the other hand, there's a teaching that it's going to move from Shaul, who comes from, I think, Shevet Binyamin, and it's going to move to the house of David. So Saul is caught in this kind of vortex of mistrust. And as I said, perhaps some sort of mental illness. Jonathan is in a very difficult position. He's loyal to his father. He loves his father. He's supposed to continue his father's legacy. He also appreciates and loves David. And there's a lot of issue of trust between the different parts and where the allegiance should be. So we're coming in the middle of the story. Okay. Is that enough of a background? Are people okay with this? This makes sense? We're good?
Yes.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
If anybody, thank you, Stuart. And thank you, Vivian, so if anybody's a question, of course you can ask, but I wanted to give you that. And now we're coming on a scene. We are going to see a scene. We're going to read about a scene where David is sure, just hold on one second. David is sure that Saul is going to kill him. And Jonathan's like, no, it can't be my father. He might have some mistrust, but he's not going to kill you. So we're coming on this scene and we're coming in the middle. So now see how it plays out. And Jonathan said to him, meaning to David, tomorrow will be the new moon. So there you go, Machar Chodesh. We got immediately the connection. There's a quick literary connection. And you will be missed when your seat remains vacant. So I just want to make sure we really start. Yep. This is because David is away, right? David is running away. So he said, wait a minute, Saul is going to miss you. So first of all, what does this tell you about Rosh Chodesh? What does it mean your seat will be vacant? Anybody know? Anybody? There was a gathering and a rejoicing and a feast, a celebratory feast by the king every Rosh Chodesh. We're really missing something that we don't celebrate Rosh Chodesh enough. In one of my children's schools, which began around the time she was the second class, she's 34 now, so it was a while ago. But when she went into Kita Aleph, I was on the steering committee, and one of the things that I suggested, which I guess I had seen somewhere else, was that the kids on Rosh Chodesh all wear white shirts to school. So it's very accepted in Israel to wear white shirts on Yom Ha'atzmaut, Yom HaShoah, Yom HaZikaron, because there are all sorts of ceremonies those days. But wearing it once a month or twice a month, if it's a 2-day Rosh Chodesh, wearing it to school and everybody's wearing a white shirt added to the festive atmosphere. And here we see, you will be missed. There's going to be a feast at Shaul in the palace. Yeah, in the king's palace to celebrate the new moon. So I'm just inviting all of us to think of that, because at the end I really want to invite all of us to think of a way that we can celebrate Rosh Chodesh. I, of course, will be celebrating on Sunday because it's my birthday, but that can just be an inner celebration. But I just want to plant an idea that everybody wears something special on Rosh Chodesh every month. Just something. It could be a special piece of jewelry. It could be a slightly nicer shirt. What will you do every month to remind yourself that it's Rosh Chodesh? Okay, back to the text. Yeah, I hear you, Vivian. You're thinking. So he says, wait, you're going to be missing. Your seat will be vacant. You'll be missing. So the day after tomorrow, go down all the way to the place where you hid the other time and stay whatever marker at this stone. Everybody can see. I tried to make it larger. People can see. I learned how to make it larger on the Mac. I'm very proud of myself. Remember, I told you I have a new computer, so I'm learning everything. Now, no, this is what Yonatan says to him, Yonatan. He's giving him a sign. He said, you're going to hide at the other end of this field or this, whatever it is. I am going to shoot 3 arrows to one side as if I was shooting at some mark, at some target or at a bird maybe. And I'm going to take a little page boy with me. And I'm going to say to the boy, go and find the arrows. And if I say, you're going to hear me speaking, you're going to hear me. If I call to the boy, hey, the arrows are on this side, meaning they're between me and you and the page boy, be reassured and come out of hiding, for you are safe and there is no danger. But if instead I say to the page boy, hey, the arrows are beyond you, you didn't reach them, then leave. For the Lord has sent you away. So first of all, we see how much God figures into them speaking to each other. And now he says, as for the promise we made to each other, may the Lord be witness between you and me forever. Okay, everybody with me? So we already see talks of allegiance between, there's all sorts of things happening underneath, currents underneath. Yonatan doesn't believe. David has to trust Yonatan. He could have left. He could have just run further away. But no, he decides to hide in the field. The new moon came, the Rosh Chodesh. The king sat down to partake of the meal. Now, when it says the meal, it's clear that there was a special meal. When the king took his usual place on the seat by the wall, Yonatan rose. Avner sat down at Saul's side, but David's place remained vacant. So I guess everybody had their own seat. But that day, Saul said nothing. He said, oh, it just happened. He must be unclean, meaning tameh, ritually unclean. That happened. They were very careful about seminal emissions, or other reasons, I think. And they would only be unclean, meaning spiritually impure till the nightfall. Then they would go to the mikveh. But on the day after the new moon, the second day, this speaks to what you said actually, Moshe. So it means there were 2 days of Rosh Chodesh. David's place was vacant again. So now Shaul knows that he's friends with his son Jonathan. He says, why did the son of Yishai come to the meal yesterday or today? And then Yonatan actually covers for him and says, David begged leave of me to go to Bethlehem. What did he say? He lied, of course. Please let me go, or white lie. For we are going to have a family feast in our town. My brother has summoned me to it. Do me a favor, let me slip away to see my kinsman. That is why he's not come to the king's table. So we already see that Saul, is going to react in a way that is completely inappropriate. He flew into a rage against Yonatan. So first of all, he's angry at his son for allowing him to go home to his family. He's not working together with him. He's not understanding that David may have wanted to go home. And it really should have been angry maybe at David, who is not showing allegiance. You son of a perverse, rebellious woman. Terrible thing for a father to say to a child. I know that you side with the son of Yishai to your shame, and to the shame of your mother's nakedness. Horrible way for a father to speak to a son. For as long as the son of Yishai lives on earth, neither you nor your kingship will be secure. He's telling him, you know that David is going to succeed me as king if he stays alive. Now then, have him brought to me, for he is marked for death. So now Yonatan doesn't need any more proof that Shaul wants to kill David. So he spoke up and he said to his father, why should he be put to death? What has he done? He tries to call him out on it, but of course, when somebody's not in their right state of mind, they're not going to be able to hear a legitimate question and a reasonable question. What was Saul's answer? He threw his spear at him to strike him down. And Yonatan realized that his father was determined to do away with David. Yonatan rose from the table in a rage. He ate no food on the second day of the new moon. He was grieved about David because his father had humiliated him. In the morning, Yonatan went out to the open for the meeting with David, accompanied by a young boy. He said to the boy, run ahead and find the arrows that I shoot. And as the boy ran, he shot the arrows past him. When the boy came to the place where the arrows shot by Yonatan had fallen, he said, hey, the arrows are beyond you. So he could have just stopped there. But I believe he was overwhelmed by emotion, not knowing if he would ever see David again. And this shows his love. So look at what he does. Continuing on. He says to the boy, quick, hurry, gather the arrows, don't stop. He gathered the arrows. The boy suspected nothing because only Yonatan and David knew the arrangement. And Yonatan hands all of his things, his bow, his arrows, everything to the boy and says, take these back to the town. And when the boy left, David emerged from his concealment. He flung himself face down on the ground and bowed low 3 times. They kissed each other and wept together. David wept even longer than Yonatan, and Yonatan said to David, go in peace, for we two have sworn to each other in the name of the Lord. May the Lord witness between you and me, between your offspring and mine, forever. Okay. I would love to hear any thoughts that have come up for you when I was reading it. Please. Yes, Lance,
I know,
bivakasha.
I know 2 things happen.
Wait, Stuart, 1 second. First Lance, and then I'll call. First Lance, then I'll call on you. Yes, Lance.
What is the Hebrew word for moon?
For moon. Chodesh? Just moon? Well, there's a few names. There's
Just
Yareach.
moon.
Yareach, there's also Livana from the word white, Lavan. You mean in this story? I have to look.
Where is the word for moon in this story?
1 second, Stuart. Just a minute, please. Machar Chodesh means Machar Rosh Chodesh. That's all. It doesn't say anything else.
But how do you know
Chodesh
it's the new
represent-
moon?
That's what it means. Chodesh.
Wait a
Machar
minute.
Chodesh, it refers
Chodesh
to
can
Rosh
also
Chodesh.
mean holy, and it can
No,
be
it
a
can't. No, it
mechanistic
can't.
representative
No,
of
that's
Hashrit.
not true. Lance, that's not true. That's Kodesh with a kuf. This is with a chet. Chodesh. That's 2 different words. Kodesh is holy and Chodesh is moon.
Chodesh means moon.
No.
Levana means moon.
Chodesh is, 1 minute. Chodesh is a month. Machar Chodesh, Chodesh is a shorthand way of, in this case, of saying Rosh Chodesh. And they were celebrating Rosh Chodesh, it's clear. Okay, anything else,
Wait, I have
Lance?
another point to make.
Yeah, quick, yeah. Yeah,
Professor
go on.
Jacob Wright
Yeah,
suggests
yeah.
that the feast that they're
Yeah.
talking about is for a full moon and not a new moon.
Oh, that's interesting. Then why 2 days? It's only 1 day of a full moon.
There was a feast for 2 days.
Yeah, but I'm saying the full moon only happens 1 night, so why would they do it 2 days? Just saying, that's all. Okay, first Stuart, then Ruby. Stuart. But thank you, I appreciate that. Yes.
What is the moon is Levana. That's
Also, yes, Yareach, right, Yareach or
Okay,
Levana, yeah.
Okay. The second thing was we read in the when David saying guess what's the end crazy on Abimelech. One of the things when David saying insanity, we was saving from the soul. So Abimelech. Abimelech is a generic term for anybody that's against the Hebrews, right? Abimelech, because we say Abraham is Abimelech, and the other people.
Wait, Stuart, I'm not sure. Stuart, I'm not sure I'm following what you're trying to say. Can you be?
It was a part that when David saying insanity for
I didn't say that David didn't feign insanity. I said that Saul may have had some bouts of emotional illness. I didn't say David.
One of the things I can't explain what there's a part of this part of the I can't say part of this citizen and David saying escape me from Ali Malik. Part of the citizen when David.
Okay, I'm not.
You ever read that? You don't
I'm
remember
not
that.
sure what you're referring to. You're referring to a story with Abimelech?
Yeah,
Is it relevant to our story here?
Saul wanted to kill him. One is he escapes. He goes to Abimelech.
Okay.
He,
Okay.
that's one thing. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think Jonathan dies. That's the bad part of it because Jonathan died.
Right, okay, but let's wait a second. Wait. We just don't have time to go through the whole story of, let's focus here because we only have 10 minutes left. Let's focus on the, Stuart, I just want to get, what?
I say something.
I just want to focus.
Ben Yishai, the Shai from Ben Yishai. Hashem wanted David to start with. I think
Yes,
Hashem wanted
agreed.
David to start with.
Okay,
Forget
thank you.
about it. Sure.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. Thank you very much. Ruby, and then Robert.
Okay, did Jonathan have any desire for future kingship? Because if so, wouldn't that have negatively impacted on his friendship with David?
So that's what's so interesting is that I don't think there's a good answer to that, but he does, you kind of see it in that last pasuk that there should always be shalom between our offspring, meaning that even if you succeed me, which of course they had a prophecy that it's going to go to the house of David and the tribe of Yehudah, of Judah, he's saying, but I hope that my offspring will always be protected because of our love. So it's an interesting point, Ruby. I think he realized at some point that he would have to give up the kingship, but he might have believed in David, that David was a better king. You don't agree with that?
Well, it's just an amazing thing to give up, to say I'm going
Yes,
to give
I
up
agree.
kingship for friendship. Well, because I think you're better.
That's huge. That's huge. I agree. I think that's a really good point that, and we don't know because Jonathan, as Stuart pointed out, he was killed. He and Shaul both killed, maybe even the same day. But so he never ended up succeeding. But that is a part of it that doesn't get discussed that much. How was it that he was willing to give up the kingship? And maybe he wasn't sure, but he loved David and appreciated him. But thank you. Yeah. How could you want, giving up the kingship is huge. Huge. And that's what Shaul was telling him. Well, as long as David is alive, your kingdom is in jeopardy. But his lover David couldn't imagine him being killed. So I think that's an important point. Robert? Unless you had something else to say, Ruby.
No.
Okay, thank you. Robert?
Speaking of the seating arrangements, it says that Shaul was seated with his wall to the back. That's traditionally the safest place to sit. He can't be attacked from behind, and everyone is visible in front of him. It's also remarkable to me that when it says he must have picked up his spear, which must have been right next to him, to throw it at Jonathan, his son must have been right next to him also. But he obviously
that's not so clear that his son was right next to him, because how could he throw his spear then, right?
Right. I agree with you, but it's remarkable that also he missed.
It's remarkable that he missed. Yes, I agree. And also, what did it do to the people sitting there to see this playing out? Any thoughts? I mean, what is that like?
Wild.
Yeah,
I must have been horrified at Shaul's rage.
Yeah, what do you do when the king seems to be unraveling in front of your eyes? Like, what do you do? How do you depose a king, or it's not so simple. Anybody here read or watched The Cain Mutiny? Remember that? Very powerful book and movie, I think.
Yeah.
About somebody, a leader, derailing and unraveling, and how do you prove it? And I mean, like, the king could have said, oh, that it's punishable. It was punishable by death if you, what's the word when you disloyalty to the king? There's a word for that, right? When disloyal.
They agree to act in consort to overthrow him.
But there's a word, right? But in any case, if you go against the king in Judaism, supposedly you can be put to death. So could he have said, "Oh, this is about usurping my kingdom," or allowing David, or whatever? I don't know. But I think that whole scene is just both of these scenes are quite remarkable, I think. Any other thoughts, Vivian? Did you have a thought, Vivian?
No, I've been following it. It was evident that Jonathan was not going to be the next king, and the only other person around who might be was David. So
why was it obvious?
I think they were.
Why was it obvious that he wouldn't be the next king in your mind?
Yeah.
Why?
God made
Why?
it.
No, why? Wait 1 second, Stuart. Vivian, why was it obvious that Yonatan wouldn't be the next? Oh, Mored ben Malchut.
Yeah.
Thank you. Moshe. Rebel
Yeah.
against. Why do you think it was obvious that Yonatan wouldn't be the next king?
Because looking at Saul, who was apparently like going crazy, that people would think, oh my God, so how could we have his son be the
Oh, got it.
yeah,
That's a good
yeah,
point. That's actually a really good point.
yeah,
I wonder, Ruby, if that played into it. Who knows? Ruby is
yeah,
always, I
I know.
always see, Ruby,
Yes,
that you look at things in
the-
modern day. 1 second, Stuart, just a minute. That you look at things in these modern day eyes and you're not willing to just take what's written as, as, I don't know what the word is, but without, questioning it and saying, wait a minute, does this make
mm,
sense? Do people act
yeah.
that way? And that's why I always see you
Mm.
question. Stuart, did you want to add a question?
And
A
Well,
thought?
yeah,
also,
yeah, well,
Wait 1 second, Vivian.
the
Yeah.
fact
yeah,
that Naomi, when she went with Boaz, that's so God made Yishai. God made that a long time ago. That Yishai, that David was going to be the king, and even Eliyahu Navi is going to bring Eliyahu Navi is going to bring back. Is going to come back, and David will be the son of David will bring back the Messiah.
Right. We know that now. But Stuart, you're talking, this now with our eyes, but they didn't know all
mm,
that at the time.
yeah,
You're
mm,
using information that we have. Yes, Vivian, what
mm,
do you want to add?
yeah. I was thinking that they looked at David as being the powerful one because he had killed Goliath, and he had a very positive view from the people. The people really
Yeah,
thought
but
of
so did
him as
Jonathan.
being
So
the
did Jonathan.
powerful one.
Correct,
Yeah.
but so did Jonathan because he also single-handedly beat a bunch of
Mm.
Plishtim in a previous parak. So it's not so clear. But I want to add a few more things. Thank you, everybody. I want to add a few more things here. First of all, it's so interesting because the Ramah is Rabbi Moshe Isserlish, who wrote a gloss on the Shulchan Aruch, and usually we take his words as the psak for Ashkenazim. But he wrote this. You know that there's something called Kiddush Levana. That's the question of how do you say
Yeah.
month in Hebrew, Levana. So that's done when you see the moon. It takes a little while to see the moon, and you can do it up to, I think, maybe 10 days or until the full moon appears. So he writes like this: it is customary to say, David Melech Yisrael Chai v'Kayam. David, the king of Israel, lives on forever. Everybody's David Melech Yisrael Chai v'Kayam. Because David's reign is compared to the moon, and it is destined to be renewed like the moon. And Knesset Israel, meaning Jews, the Jewish people, will return and reconnect with her partner, her spouse, which is God, just as the moon is renewed with the sun. And therefore, as we dance and rejoice at the Kiddush Levan. Okay, let me explain this. The Ramah explains that the moon symbolizes David HaMelech, which is so interesting, right? Because we're reading about David HaMelech when tomorrow is the new moon. It's just interesting, this connection. Just as the moon waxes and wanes and disappears, but then waxes again, so too David's dynasty waxes and wanes. It might look like it has completely disappeared, but it is never gone. It will reappear and grow strong again. When we see the renewed moon, we are filled with the hope that we will also be privileged to see the renewal of David's kingdom. And so too, okay, 1 second. Okay, so the Ramah is the one who says that the moon is a metaphor not just for David, but for the whole Jewish people, because we too wax and wane, as you know. We too sometimes feel like we're in danger of disappearing and God's light no longer shines upon us. I was just spoke yesterday with a conservative rabbi and a Reform rabbi, another Orthodox rabbi, to a bunch of Israelis. There were Arabs, there were secular Jews, there were Bnei Brak Haredi Jews, there were modern Orthodox Jews. And we spoke to them in Hebrew. They asked all sorts of questions, and they asked us what is the biggest challenge to the Jewish people in the United States. And pretty much across the board, we all said hitzbolilut, which is intermarriage and what is it called when you disappear into the general population?
Assimilation.
Assimilation. Exactly, assimilation. And then we might feel like we're in danger of disappearing entirely. If only 10% of the Jewish people in the United States are Orthodox or align themselves with Orthodoxy, and the largest by far majority is Reform. But, and he said this, the Reform rabbi, he was great. And he said, but we also know that it is dwindling. Our shuls, our communities are disappearing. They're getting smaller. And the smaller they get and the less affiliation, their grandchildren will not have any connection to Judaism. The renewal of the moon gives us hope and reminds us that our relationship with God is also constantly renewed. Machar Chodesh, the day before the new moon, is the darkest night of the month, and it symbolizes the Jewish people at our most vulnerable. The Haftarah of Machar Chodesh presents us David HaMelech, the King David, at his most vulnerable, as he stands before a future that looks bleak and dark. His life and the lives of his descendants will not move in a straight line. There will be highs, there will be lows that last for generations. So too the Jewish people. Our story also does not follow a straight line, is also full of highs and lows. Yet, as the Haftarah of Machar Chodesh reminds us, no matter how bleak and dark a given moment in Jewish history might be, we have the hope that the future we face will have light.
Wow, that's a very powerful message.
Yep, that's what I felt as well. There's another message here which might speak to some people. Oh, I have to go. I have a 12 o'clock meeting. How appropriate to begin a new month with a reminder of what true friendship and devotion are, as Ruby was pointing out, that she finds it hard to believe. As the moon renews itself, we too have the opportunity to rejuvenate ourselves spiritually, renew our relationships with God, but also with our friends and loved ones. So I invite everybody here to make Rosh Chodesh every month a day that is meaningful, whether it's calling up a friend and renewing that relationship, wearing something special, remembering that it's Rosh Chodesh. And if you come to Shul or if you read the Haftarah, I hope this became meaningful to you. It was meaningful to me. I don't have time for a takeaway to go around. I wish I did, but I invite each of you to take your own takeaway. Be well, take good care of yourselves, and hope to see you next
Bye.
week. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you.